Tonight we're going to hear from Captain Robert Desch, who is U.S. Coast Guard retired. Bob is also the former executive director of the Door County Maritime Museum. He is dedicated to the preservation and celebration of maritime history of Wisconsin's Door Peninsula. And the Door County Maritime Museum includes a flagship facility in Sturgeon Bay, the museum Tug John Purvis, the historic light station at Canal Island, and Death Door Museum in Gills Rock. Prior to joining the Maritime Museum, he served for more than 36 years with the United States Coast Guard. Thank you for your service. Seeing duty on 5 Coast Guard cutters and in a wide variety of shore assignments, including commanding officer of the Story International Ice Patrol. A longtime Coast Guard history buff, Bob is the former executive director of the Foundation for Coast Guard History and presently serves on the organization's Board of Regents. He continues to research and write on a wide variety of Coast Guard topics, including, and he has published numerous articles, essays, and blogs on various aspects of Coast Guard history. He's presented dozens of naval and maritime history lectures and conference papers. And tonight, he's going to talk to us about the building of the Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal. So please join me in welcoming Bob.
Well, thank you. Every time I hear my own bio, I'll go, man, I must be old. But happy to be here. This is one of my favorite subjects. In the long timeline of maritime history in Door County and the Door Peninsula in its entirety, I think that digging in the canal, I can make a pretty strong argument that it's probably the most significant tick on that timeline. It did a lot of things. Most of all, I guess it made the top 2/3 of the peninsula and island, right? So, and that would help shape the personality of this place. And one thing I say is that Door County's history is maritime history. I mean, it's surrounded by big water, and we'll talk a little more about that in a minute. I'm going to ask that we save the questions to the end. And the reason I do that is when they give me 45 minutes, I use it all up, and then when we go over, it's whoever asks the question's fault, not mine. So that's an aerial view of the Sturgeon Bay, Lake Michigan Shipping Canal. That's kind of like the whole official title because it does run between the Bay of Sturgeon Bay and Lake Michigan. I got to do like this because I can't even see my own slide because I don't know what I'm going to say until the next slide pops up. So if I get in your way over here, please holler. It'll be okay. So first, a little background. At this time period, when we're talking about the 1850s through the 1880s, this was when this part of the world was changing dynamically. It was still the wild, wild west, if you will. It was the Northwest Territories. Everything on the Great Lakes at that point was moving by water. There were very few roads. The railroad hadn't gotten here yet. So it was the highway. That's how everything came. The Erie Canal was completed in 1825, and that changed the entire Great Lakes. Before the digging of the canal, it was an expensive, arduous trip from the East Coast. So if you were going out here to take advantage of all of the opportunities that presented themselves in this part of the world, you were going to take a 2 or 3 week stagecoach wagon ride across the mountains, and then find yourself a boat and go to wherever else you were going to go on the Great Lakes. That connected the Hudson River to the rest of the Great Lakes. So when it opened, it revolutionized trade. It again took that uncomfortable wagon ride and turned it into a 5-day leisure cruise down the Erie Canal. Freight rates and the price of a ticket to get out here fell dramatically, and settlers from Western New York, from Europe, were pouring into this part of the world, and the opportunities were endless. So Joseph Harris, he is the father of the Sturgeon Bay and Lake Michigan Ship Canal. he's one of my favorite characters. This guy was something. So when he got here, he was at one time or another the secretary of the first county board. He was the county clerk and register of deeds. He was the county treasurer. He was a state senator from the area, and he also founded the area's first newspaper, which was incredibly popular because that's how you learned anything, right? It was the internet of its time. So he pushed almost instantly for this whole plan of the canal. And excuse me, he was a Londoner. He was born in London in 1813, immigrated to the U.S. in 1849, and then made it out here to Sturgeon Bay area by 1855. And when he got out here, the possibilities were endless. The other thing is he fathered 10 children with 2 wives. He outlived the first wife and had remarried and had another 5 children. So we know he did one thing really, really well. So again, I talked about this a little bit, but he had this whole idea of the canal, and he used his newspaper to publish it, and he talked to anybody who would listen about the opportunity to have this canal. And the benefits of the canal were it was dramatically going to shorten the trip between the cities on the bay of Green Bay, and the places along the west side of the bay, and your trip to Chicago or Milwaukee or Detroit or wherever you were going in the other direction. Rich hardwood forests and pine forests on that side, and moving it to where all of this building construction was going on because of that population boom that happened after the opening of the Erie Canal was really important. Plus, the other way to get there was through this little passage up at the tip of the peninsula, appropriately called Death's Door, right? So I mean, it was not an easy trip through there. If the weather kicked up or you made a mistake in your sailing directions, you could end up on a lee shore, and it would just ground you ashore somewhere. So this canal was an idea, and it started to take hold, but of course it would be a very expensive operation, and not everybody. Some people thought he was crazy. He got laughed at by a lot of folks about trying to cut this hole through the peninsula. So, the Sturgeon Bay and Lake Michigan Ship Canal and Harbor Company. That was the corporation that he formed, and a couple of big coups that he got as far as making this thing happen. He got William Ogden, the president of the Chicago Northwestern Railroad, on board, and he was the first mayor of Chicago. He was one of the largest lumber barons out here in this part of the world. And so once he got him on board, then some other folks, well, if he takes it seriously, this must be something that's going to be going on. And he got an impressive list of citizens and successful businessmen, not only from out here on the frontier, but also in places back east, to kind of join the corporation, the company, as investors. So the next thing is to get a land grant. Now, there were lots of projects going on in this part of the world, well, all over the middle part of the United States, that were based on land grants. And the University of Wisconsin is a land grant university. Most of the universities in the Big Ten are land grant universities. And how a land grant worked is that there were still millions of acres of property that was the property of the peoples of the United States. It just belonged to the United States in general. So you would get a grant of a number of acres of this property, and then you could find investors to buy that and develop that property. And the money from those investors is where you raise the money for whatever your project was. So this was a land grant project. So his first big step was he convinces the legislature in Wisconsin to kind of endorse it, if you will. Then he puts together a pamphlet and heads to Washington, D.C., and starts meeting with congressmen and businessmen and all this kind of stuff, promoting, trying to acquire 200,000 acres of forest so that he could use that granting of to sell it to investors to raise the money to build the canal. That's just his 2.5 page pamphlet. So everybody can read that, right? I'm just kidding. It's like So 1864, he seeks this 200,000 acres. He gets no support from the Wisconsin representatives in Congress in Washington. He finally gets Senator Howe and Doolittle to introduce a bill to the Senate. It fails. So in 1866, with the support of those influential businessmen that we talked about a little while, the bill passes. So he's got 200,000 acres, and it is the odd numbered sections nearest the canal property. Well, most of them were those acres were over on the Michigan side and upper parts of Wisconsin. There were a couple of small plots that were actually on the peninsula, but the forests here were not as desirable as the forests farther away. So he's out trying to get people to invest in this idea of building this canal. And despite the land grant, they're like skeptics. And so they're encouraging him to go after a second land grant, an additional 200,000 acres. So there's going to be 400,000 acres, which would be more appealing to these guys to invest in as far as the numbers of acres that they could acquire. So again, he's still having trouble selling the idea. And one of his big helps was the lighthouse keeper, S.P. Drew, on Green Island. I think you guys all know where Green Island is, halfway between the mouth of the Bay of Sturgeon Bay and Menominee. And as I said, lots of ships coming and going down the Bay of Green Bay. And so he gets SB to count the ships. So they have some kind of realistic data that he can present to these investors. So the vessel count, so this is 1868. There were over 7,000 passages. There weren't 7,000 vessels. So sometimes one or more vessels would pass more than one time. But that's how much traffic he was looking at. And they estimated based on the sizes of the ships and output that there was 600 million board feet of lumber that was traveling through there. Now, so he goes, if I can shorten this trip down and cheapen the whole mission, just think how beneficial that's going to be economically. So Congress still failed to be impressed. so 1872, Congress declares, nope, quit coming back. We're not. You got 200,000 acres. Make it happen. So a bill gets passed. This is a big one. A bill also gets passed. This is going to have a terminus. It's going to go out and end at the on the shores of Lake Michigan. And the ports on Lake Michigan were valued because there just weren't a lot of them, right? So, here, except for Bailey's Harbor, everything was pretty much. There's no port to go into. So the Corps of Engineers says, we think this guy is going to succeed. And so we want to make sure we have a harbor of refuge ready at the end of this thing when this dude finally gets this cut through the middle of the canal. So that project gets approved, and they're going to create this harbor of refuge. The Corps' idea was, well, even if he fails, we will have put the seawalls out there, and we will have all of the facilities necessary for it to be a harbor of refuge, because ships coming up along the coast of Lake Michigan when caught in a storm in this part of the world had no place to hide. So here is two kind of incidental things that occur that actually starts the ball really rolling. First of all, there was a big problem with lumber pirates. Remember, we have these millions of acres of virgin trees, and folks would just come in and steal them, right? And so the government, the Revenue Cutter Service and other officials are trying to stop these guys, but still they're getting away with it, and he's losing lumber off his 200,000 acres. The next one is the Great Fire. That fire burned a lot of those 200,000 acres. And so they settled the deal with, there's a trespass fund. He gets $40,000 from the fact that people are trespassing onto this property and cutting trees. And the other one is reimbursement for it's kind of like it's like a hurricane, you get the damage, you get reimbursed. The government reimbursed him another $40,000 to get started. So he's got $80,000. He's got that seed money to kind of get rolling. So work begins First shovel load of dirt of earth is scooped on July 8th, 1872 by the dredge Gutches. This picture here, great picture, 1870. These are the folks that are clearing the trees so that they can get to the end of where the water is on Sturgeon Bay and start cutting into the land with steam dredges and picks and shovels and all of those kinds of things. But you see down here in the lower right, they built basically a small railroad. They weren't hauled by steam engines; they were hauled by horses. But they could haul stuff out to the site to start the clearing process. There's a picture. It's a little grainy, obviously, but that's how they've got it already cleared. You can see right here on the lower left-hand edge, they've started to take some of the dirt out and start to move forward with it. And here's another one of the dredge, the Dodge and the Tug Reindeer, I think it is. Anyway, at the ship canal, this is in 1878, and they're actually starting to get some good work going. 1874. Depression hits the United States. All those folks who might have been interested in investing or already had invested were now no longer interested. It's just like the crash of the stock market. You know, it's depression. These guys are holding on to their money. And so the citizens of Sturgeon Bay, many of which had come here to dig the canal or help dig the canal or were going to benefit from it, they were not a happy folk. But he stays his ground. So work resumes in earnest in 1877. The economy improves. They're going to get back to work. And finally, in 1878, they cut the last dirt through, and the water of the Bay of Sturgeon Bay and Lake Michigan are now blended. And this is the whole idea for Sturgeon Bay is that it's going now to become both a bay port and a lake port. And lake ports were really important. If you were going to have any kind of development on the end of the bay, in Sturgeon Bay, you were going all the way around the top and in from the back. Now you're going to be both of those ports. Ports were so important at the time. If you've transited to down the highway to get to Green Bay, you find there's this little sliver of Kewaunee County that cuts across between Brown and Dorr, over there. That's because when they were drawing the lines, they're creating Dorr County and Brown County and Kewaunee County. The Kewaunee citizens said, no, we want a port on the bay, because both bay ports and lake ports were incredibly important because everything moved by water. So that's why that's Kewaunee's port. Right? So big celebration in Sturgeon Bay, July 4th, 1878. Through the big party. Yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, but now you could actually transit a small vessel through the canal. But the sides were not stabilized yet. It wasn't dredged to navigational depth, but it was still worth celebrating. By the time the thing is all removed, as you can see, it's well over a million cubic yards of material that came out of the canal. Okay, simultaneously, back that harbor of refuge, they've been working on this. The government's been working on this harbor of refuge, and they're ready when the thing finally cuts through, or almost ready to get ready to have that be the Lake Michigan end of the canal. So here's the construction of the harbor of refuge. The breakwaters similar to what you see today. One on either side, extending out into the lake. So it kind of creates this little mini man-made artificial harbor at the end of the canal. So here's just another photo of some of the stabilization work. It was all timber, all the way down the side. You can see that great big pile of dirt and sand and rock that's piled on the left side. They piled all of this stuff. They piled all of the stuff on the south or north side of the bay or of the canal. I mean. So here's the canal facts at a glance. And what I really like about this, and you guys read how long it took, how big the canal is, but excavation was calculated out to the penny. And the same thing with all of the other rest of the work. And so the total cost was $291,461.69. So I mean, they were precise with their funding. Yeah. So there again, and then as the canal started to go, you paid a toll to go through the canal, and the way that toll was paid was you paid someone to pull you through the canal, because I mean the canal was, or this end of the canal was far too narrow to sail through unless wind was just absolutely perfect. So there were lots of tug captains interested in being part of the company, charged to tow your vessel through the canal, and part of the money that they received was to go back to the corporation. Expenses never kept up with, or revenue never kept up with expenses. It was kind of a losing proposition right away, but it was one of those too big to fail things. Remember that crap from the banks back? But anyway, this was too important of a project, and the Corps looked at it and said, no, we'll buy it. And of course, they got it at a bargain price. At this point, the investors are, it's like, hey, I'm going to get $100,000 out of this thing anyway, so like, we'll go with it. So the Corps bought it, and they maintained it ever since. And after that, there was no charge to go through. Part of the way shippers would beat the deal on the towing was they would just tie themselves together, and then they'd only pay the tug the one single price. And he'd have to pull three ships through, three boats through, because they're all tied together, right? And we're one ship, So I guess it worked. So again, the canal, the cut part is 7,400 feet long and 100 feet wide. And then the harbor of refuge that they completed extended another 1,350 feet into the lake. So Harris had another idea of how he was going to make a little money on this deal, right? So he bought up a bunch of property on the lake shore where he had, in his mind, the canal was going to end. And so that property would become, very expensive and worthy of investing in, because it's going to be at the end of this canal. But once all the engineers came in, especially the geologists, they're like, no, that's not the best place to put the canal. So they decided to go about 3/4 of a mile south of where he had all this property purchased. So he never really made anything on. He was going to call it Harrisburg. He was going to, a nice little city. Didn't work. So here's the first loaded ships towed through the canal. It was a 3-masted schooner, America, bound for Chicago in 1879. And then you can see, this is a picture of see all those guys tying all their ships together? So one tug's pulling them all through. No, we're just one ship. We're just all tied together, So that was the thing. So in 1882, canal's only been open for a little while, 415 ships. By 1892, almost 4,000 ships are going through that canal annually. It must have been pretty cool. And as a maritime history nerd, if I could get transported back to the days of sail for a couple of days, because you could have walked out to the end of the canal in those days, and there'd be tall ships all on the horizon, 5 or 6 in any direction that you could look. Now you could go out there and stand there for a couple of days, and maybe you'd see a ship. Right, so I mean the sheer amount of cargo that was being moved by sail and steam in that time period was truly astounding. So, how long is the canal? I used to get that one all the time. So the cut part of it we just saw what the dimensions are that, but officially, according to the NOAA chart and the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard, the canal itself. Runs 7 miles long and runs all the way out basically to Sherwood Point. And that's because they had to dredge that channel. They had to straighten some things out. They had to remove some obstructions just to make sure they had a good, clear channel. The channel was nature's channel was pretty crooked and hazardous, especially out in the bay. Anybody who's a small boater knows there's still rocks out there you don't want to find by Braille. So there was a lot of rocky shoals area. So then in the canal that we kind of know today really came into being in 1940. We're on the cusp of going to war. Sturgeon Bay is rapidly becoming a shipbuilding center, especially for vessels to win the war. So the Corps of Engineers, this was the last big improvement project. They widened it, deepened it, stabilized it, and really made that channel that I was talking about more clear, more well-marked, much safer. So here's the dredging in 1940. Obviously much bigger dredges. They took out a lot of the original wood sides so they can widen and deepen the canal. But you can tell it's a much more powerful dredge than the ones that were digging it back in the 1800s. Yeah, there's the dredge Kiwani working on the thing. And this one, they instead of just piling it all on the side, that's when they first started hauling the debris somewhere else and actually dumping it in the lake. So the canal made Sturgeon Bay. I mean, it with Joseph Harris's help and all of those roles that he filled in government and civic involvement. The county seat was originally going to be up here, and he persuaded and made the case for and made Sturgeon Bay the population center, and so the county seat made it there, which helped him with all of the other things that he was trying to achieve, including the canal. But the canal also created a need for lighthouses and life-saving stations. So a look at the lighthouse. The first lighthouse was Dunlap's Reef, right in the middle of Sturgeon Bay. The Dunlap Reef is still there, just the lighthouse isn't. There is an ACE navigation, a fixed structure that's on the one end of, on the west end of Dunlap Reef. And those of you who've lived here a long time know Dunlap Reef, sometimes you can't see it. Sometimes it's a pretty good sized island. When I was at the Maritime Museum, that's when the white pelicans first discovered the Dunlap Reef. And it was still a pretty substantial piece of property at that point. And they like to go back, and they like to nest on islands, and they like to go back to the same island over and over again. So then, as you also remember, the water rose. The water got quite deep for a while. And it was fun that first year watching those pelicans come back completely confused about what happened to their island, you know? So, but anyway, Dunlap Reef was there. Eventually, when they did all that work on the canal, the light, it was a set of ranges, and they had straightened the channel out so that the ranges were no longer on site. For all the boaters, you know what a range is. You have a light here that's lower and a light back here that's higher. And when you put those two lights, one right over the top of each other, you're on channel. Or if it's off to the left or off to the right, you're not in the channel. Well, now it doesn't pay to have a really big lighthouse and a forward range light if they don't line up on the channel. So the Dunlap Reef light was abandoned, and the original structures were removed, and they sold the house. The keeper's quarters, took the lantern and all of the apparatus, and you could buy the house. The deal was you had to get it off the reef. So the purchaser waited until winter. They slid the house across the ice. It still exists. Its address is 411 South 4th Avenue in Sturgeon Bay. You can go drive by it today. And when you look at the two structures, I mean, you can see the two side windows and the front door. And of course, the lantern would have, the picture's narrowed a little bit. The tower would have run up the front of the building. So yeah, you can go by and see it. It's still sitting there. It's the lighthouse everybody forgot. So then they built an original pier head light on the Harbor of Refuge on the end of the seawall. It was originally a wooden structure, and it completed in 1882 with the completion of the canal. And it was just like this one is today. They had those little extra walls that are out there. They're wave dampening walls, and that was a great place to put a lighthouse. So they put the lighthouse on top of that, and you walked out the catwalk and you serviced the light. The keepers' quarters were back on shore, so a way to get out there, you had to go out on your catwalk. Mariners. Lighthouses serve multiple functions. They're kind of the three general categories. Is like it sits on top of an island or a shoal, right? And then there are pierhead lights that mark the entrance to a harbor or whatever. And there are coastal lights, which as you're sailing down the coast and you're navigating by visual aid, you pick up the lighthouse and that's one point of reference, so I know approximately where I am. That's why they're different colors and have different signal marks. Interesting, Canal Island is that's on the main channel coming across the lake. If you go straight across the lake toward Canal Island, then that was one of the steering lights. She's also a coastal light. So they complained that this pierhead light wasn't bright enough. For those who are just on the coastwide trade, they're trying to sail up and down the lake and know where they are. This one didn't reach out far enough. It wasn't tall enough. It wasn't powerful enough. So then that triggered the building of the Sturgeon Bay Canal light in 1898, and that's the tall light that we know today. So this is the new lighthouse. I don't have a picture of the wooden one. It's very similar in shape. This is the steel lighthouse that was its replacement. That's part of the fog signal building that's back here behind it. That light, even today, people didn't live in it. It was an equipment shed, if you will. That's where originally the boilers and stuff for the steam whistle will be, and later the compressors for the air whistle. So it was an equipment building. You went out there to service things, turn things on, do all of those sorts of things. But on a dark and stormy night, wanting to go across that causeway was not a really good idea, right? In the middle of a storm. So they had facilities. You see this little shed here on the side, and you see where the discharge from that facility would have ended up. But that was for the guys who were out there tending the equipment when you had to run the fog signal. So this is the light, kind of as we know it today. Now it's red, but slightly different structure. But it's all still in the same location. That conical or that reflector thing up there was for the fog signal, to try to keep the fog signal from sending so much noise back to the shore. I imagine the keeper's wife wanted that one. But anyway, but that's the light, and you can see this is in a time period where now they've completed. The canal light as we know it today, which has a story of its own. Yeah, so here's the modern version as it exists today. And again, you can see the progress. Big red. So in 1890, they authorized construction of that one. Congress authorized the money in 1893. The light is illuminated officially in 1898. Unofficially, because the tower was so prone to vibration in the wind that this rotating Fresnel lens wouldn't rotate. I mean, the thing was too fragile. So they needed to do something with the original tower. That's how it started out in 1898. Just that bare, spindly tower sticking up. The next thing they did was put anchors in the ground and have a cable system that was to stabilize the light. It worked okay. The light was functional. And then eventually they put that steel structure that exists around the light today, and its only function is to make sure that thing doesn't vibrate in the wind, so that the lens sends out a stable signal. The last one was Sherwood Point. And it was... I'll do like this and it'll tell you all this stuff. It was built in 1883. It's named after the guy who actually owned the piece of property that it went onto. It's the only red brick light in Door County. The wooden fog signal, the pyramid thing was built in the same year. So the lighthouse and the fog signal all went up at the same time. And its unique place in history from a Coast Guard standpoint, it was the last staffed lighthouse on the Great Lakes. When we went through the automation process of setting the lighthouses up so they didn't need people on them, it was the last one. And it's still owned by the Coast Guard and still functions as a military recreational cottage. So if you're a member of the armed forces or retired from the armed forces, you can apply to stay there, in the cottage for a very small fee. It's really popular. It's hard to get on. The active duty guys get first choice, and then it kind of ripples down. So us old retired guys are kind of at the bottom of the list there. So but you can get it. I've stayed in the light. It's pretty cool. So not fancy. Don't think about it as a hotel room. And there's the light, and you can see the fog signal tower, the pyramided tower there. It had a bell thing, and it had a clockwork in it, just like they used clockworks to rotate the lenses in the lighthouses. The bells, the fog signal bells, worked the same way. There was like a giant cuckoo clock apparatus, and just like your bell clock at home, something strikes the thing. Well, this did the same thing. It had a big plunger that stuck out the front of the building, and it struck a large bell. And they had the pyramid type shape so that you could have a longer pull, because they used weights, just like a clock does, to move the clockworks. And so you wanted it as tall as you could so that you didn't have to get up quite as many times in the middle of the night and crank the weights up, right? So that was the idea. So again, just a really nice picture of, I believe that's Niagara, sailing in past the canal light with all the fans. So it also created a need for a life-saving station. All this new vessel traffic coming through the canal, coming in and out, would lead to shipwrecks. That's the way the days of sail were, or the early days of steam. So they identified the spot for the lighthouse, I believe it was 1882 or 1883. The general superintendent of the life-saving service, Sumner Kimball, actually visited the Great Lakes and picked out spots for the planned life-saving stations, or approved the spots. The canal was automatic. They wanted it at the Lake Michigan end of the canal for obvious reasons. But they also established the future stations at Bailey's Harbor and Plum Island. So anyway, there's some early pictures of the life-saving station. The one on the upper left, you can see the canal lights doesn't have the support structure on it yet, and it was actually black instead of white. But you can see the keeper's quarters. The life-saving station is the one forward with the little cupola on the front edge of it, and you can see the lighthouse off in the distance. You can see better on this one. This particular design of, on the lower right one, this particular design of life-saving station, and they were standard designs in that time period, and it had that watchtower on the top of the roof. But they quickly discovered that the tower, it wasn't far enough forward. It wasn't far enough out toward the lake. So the guy on watch couldn't really see north and south like his task was to do. And so they built the second watchtower that was farther out and gave them a much clearer view. And again, a picture of the, more modern picture of the station itself. The station is still in its original 1886 building. It's had some modifications done to it, but if you ever get into the station, you can go to the second floor, and you can still see where the ladder's not there, but you can still see all the woodwork and where the ladder was that would lead up to where that tower was on the roof. And this is just to kind of give you a feel for when a large modern lake flater comes through that particular dredge section of the canal, not a whole lot of width to work with. You wouldn't want to be in a little small boat log here along the side, I don't think so. There's another one that's even a little wider. So when those guys come down to go to winter layup at Bay Ship, and they're coming in off the lake and coming down that canal and in through the bridges, those guys are good. So this was the golden age of canals. The Sturgeon Bay Ship Canal was among a whole bunch of other more famous canals, if you will, being constructed at the same time period. This is just examples. The Welland Canal, which connects all of the lakes to Lake Ontario. The cuts through Canada was in 1829, and then the Suez Canal, 1869, and then the Panama Canal. They began construction in 1881. It'd have spits and starts and wouldn't get done for a while, but you get the idea. Canals were a deal. So that concludes, and I think I kept it under my 45 minutes, didn't I? Okay, good. So now we really actually do have time for questions. Yes. Sure.
I have a couple questions I'll ask real quickly. Do you know if there was a relationship between Harris and the advocate and Sidney Harris, the journalist that lived in Fish Creek?
So each, he had 10 kids. The Harris was a very probably, but I can't tell you for certain. All the Harris guys, end up staying here. Joseph Harris Jr., was a lighthouse keeper on Sherwood Point. Later became one of the pioneers of the boat building business in Sturgeon Bay. Other of his sons, took over the newspaper. Were involved in other ways. So there were a lot of Harrises that were very much part of the history of. Of the Door Peninsula, of Door County in particular. You can't hardly pull them out of the history of this stuff. It's all interwoven. Their family history and the history of this place is a quilt. It's all interwoven. Yeah.
And then how many people, do you have any idea how many people worked on the dredging or building of the canal? I
don't know exactly. I once knew a round number that I read somewhere. It's not popping into my head. I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of folks that worked on the canal. It was quite a crew. Yeah. Their office building, I think, still exists on the north side. It's a cottage now, but it was the one they built for the engineers to work out of while they were doing the thing. But I guess my answer is I don't know. Yep. Yes.
Just in building the canal, was there a particular population or ethnic group that came, like, for example, the Irish did something in New Orleans, building?
I have a home, yeah, I should have put that. I have another slide that fits into another presentation about immigration to this area. And so the Irish got here first, but they were pretty quickly overwhelmed by, in this area, by the Germans and the Belgians and the Bohemians, right? And that was that population growth. So I would have assumed there was going to be, at this point, when they were digging the canal, the big Belgian boom, so I would assume there was people from multiple ethnic groups. And of course, then you have the whole Scandinavian thing to the north, which, that population. And I'm sure there were some of all of those groups who emigrated out here because it would have been good work, right? That would have been involved, but I don't have the details on that one. Yeah. Yep.
The North Pier light.
Yes.
It looks to be in tough shape. Looks like it's deteriorating along the roof line on the lakeside. And I also understand that it's in private hands now.
It's been in private hands for quite some time.
What do you know about the ownership?
We can't hear back here.
The question is, the light, the pierhead light looks like it's in poor condition, is deteriorating, and he asked, it's in private ownership, which I agreed it is in private ownership. I don't know exactly who owns it right now, but it is privately owned. And the first person who purchased it when it went up for sale, that's one of the things that they did right away was stabilize the roof and paint it. So I don't know. I mean, the trouble with red lighthouses are they fade fast. So white's better. but that's its distinctive day mark. So, lighthouses have a light signature and a day mark signature, right? Their color and shape is what you use during the daytime to know which lighthouse you're looking at. So, once you turn it red, if you're not going to turn it, if you're going to go to a different color, then you have to, go through all of that process. But so I don't know who owns it right now. It is in private ownership. The Coast Guard is only responsible for the light signal and maintaining the power that goes out to the lighthouse. So, yep. Yes.
I'm wondering, you're talking about the Harris village that Houston established with all the land purchased when the original canal was going to be built. So that property is where exactly along Lake Forest?
North of, so where the canal is, 3/4 of a mile north. And he had a significant piece of property there. What's that?
Would that be where Portage Park is today? You know, Portage
Yeah.
Yeah, probably, because Portage Park's named because the natural portage was north of where the canal is. So yeah, so I would that would be the area. Yep. Yeah.
What was the question?
So she asked so we talked about Harrisburg, his acquisition of property, hoping that it would be at the terminus of the canal, and then he could sell that property off because it would be valuable because it was along the canal. And she was asking if that is where exactly that was. I said it's 3/4 of a mile north of the end of the canal, so it would be around the Portage Park area.
Now, are the foghorns still active?
There is a foghorn out there, yeah, and you can trigger it by, at least the last time I looked. I've been away from that part of it a little while. They're all fog signals these days pretty much are set up with, if you have a VHF radio, you're out in a boat, you trigger a certain number of clicks, and the fog signal turns on. And it only stays on for a while. It's kind of like the landing lights at a rural airport. You click it, it'll turn on, and then it goes for a while, and it'll turn off. And if you have some, 12-year-old boy who figures that out and starts clicking the stuff, the Coast Guard can turn it off. So, yeah. Because if they do, when I was a 12-year-old boy, if I figured that out, man, that signal will be going, Yeah. So the question was about the fog signal. Is it still working? Yes, it is still there. It's out. If you go out there, it's hanging. It's on the front of the lighthouse. You can see it. It's just a little plastic thing about this tall. Looks like R2D2. Yes.
How many people are stationed at the lighthouse currently?
Well, so no one's actually stationed there for the lighthouse itself, but the Coast Guard station itself, and it went through a downsizing a little while ago. I think this is a Wagner, which is wild S gas, not easily refuted. I think it's around 35, 40 people. So yeah. Somebody had one over here. Yeah. Yeah.
What good was the land you got in Marinette County, just for the lumber revenue, or?
Yes. I mean, the question was why the land was in Marinette County. It's like that was very rich lumber thing, and it all belonged to the government. I mean, so if you're going to give away the land, you want to be able. They want the best land they can for this land grant, and that was rich lumber country over there, and so very close to the water, rich forest, high quality lumber. So that's why they would give them the 200,000 acres over there. And again, it's like they were sections, 640 acres each, right? They were, so there's a section, and they said, okay, we're going to give you the odd numbered sections. That means they could save the even number sections to give to somebody else, right? So, and they would, again, the deal was closest to the canal. Well, that ends up being the place where that government land was that was closest to the canal, because it's right across the bay. So that's why they were there. So, yep. Yep.
Is your presentation available online, and is there a bibliography for, the various references that you use?
It's this particular one I don't believe is available online. And my bibliography is, for this particular presentation, is in a little binder, and it's all in pencil. So I would have to go back and type it up and make it available. I have published other stuff and done presentations that are available on YouTube and that kind of stuff, but this particular one to my knowledge is not. So, yeah. And the bibliographer, the other ones that I do are also in pencil. That's not true. Okay, boy, I must have been good.